You have ambitious goals and dreams. You want to start a business or start a YouTube channel or write a book. You want to learn a new instrument or learn a new language. You love consuming tutorials and inspirational content, and you're great at coming up with plans. But every time you sit down to work on actually achieving any of those things, you run into a problem. You can't get started. You end up scrolling through social media, watching TV, or reorganizing your desk. Anything except the work you plan to do. But the thing is, you're avoiding the thing that you want to be doing. This isn't like going to the dentist or getting your car inspected. This isn't an inconvenience that is forced upon you. These are goals and dreams you've created for yourself, and they reflect who you aspire to be. You can imagine the positive outcomes and the satisfaction that you'd get if you worked to achieve your goals and made progress, even if it was very gradual. And yet, that doesn't seem to matter much. So what's going on here? Why is it so difficult for us just to do the things we want to do? There are many answers that could be given. Maybe you just don't want it as much as you think you do. Maybe you're just too lazy. Maybe you don't have enough willpower. These are all very common ways of thinking. There's just one problem though. They're all wrong. Or at the very least, in most cases, they play a very minor role in explaining why we fail to get started and why we fail to work towards our goals consistently. And so when we try to address our inaction by focusing on willpower or discipline or motivation, we're really just setting ourselves up for failure. But it doesn't have to be this way. I found a way of thinking about and approaching this problem that is a lot more helpful, and that's what this video is about. I have been dealing with procrastination on my goals for multiple years now. I enjoy reading mostly about philosophy and religion, and I've wanted to create something to share different things that I've learned. I've had so many moments of inspiration where I felt like I was ready to make a video, to write an article, and maybe attempt to write a book of my own. I'd write out plans, I'd feel excited, I would put writing on my to-do list, and then when the time came, I'd get nothing done. Every idea looked great in my head, but the moment I tried to make it into something concrete, then I'd think it was too hard. I'd think I didn't know enough to start. The whole thing felt overwhelming. I could write pages and pages of plans, and none of them would turn into anything. I started to believe that I was just lazy, and I had really poor self-discipline. I'd see other people creating things constantly and wonder, what is wrong with me? After this went on for way too long, I started to learn more about procrastination and reflect, and then things started to change for me. Because the problem I was having was not what I thought. I learned that none of the things that I thought were making me fail really mattered that much. The realization I came to, put simply, is this. We do not avoid working because we are lazy, unmotivated, or undisciplined. We avoid working because it is a perfectly logical response to the thoughts that we have about ourselves and the thoughts we have about the work we plan to do. We naturally like to avoid pain and discomfort. We always try to find ways to escape it. We do this automatically, even if we are not aware of it. But the thing is, our perception of the discomfort that comes with work is what matters. That is what determines whether we take action, not the reality of how painful the work actually is. There are thoughts we have about the steps involved in achieving our goals, about what they would be like that can be completely distorted, and therefore they have disastrous effects. But so long as they are ignored, so long as we focus on judging our character, on calling ourselves lazy and incapable, we allow these inaccurate beliefs to control our actions, all while we are completely unaware of them. From my experience, I have found that there are 3 specific thinking traps that are incredibly easy to fall into, and they make progress impossible. However, by being aware of them and seeing them at work in yourself, you can begin to move forward without being controlled by them. The first trap can be very difficult to catch because it feels productive when we do it, and it feels like it's working for us, but it's not. I call this the knowledge trap. This is when we use learning as a tool to put off the actual work required to complete a project or advance towards a goal. This trap can feel natural because most of the time there is a certain amount of knowledge that's required in order for us to have some idea of how to get started. In this way, learning is useful, but when it becomes a trap, is when it becomes a permanent state in which the real work becomes impossible. This happens because of the thought we have that we're unprepared, and because we fear that we won't be able to measure up to the standard of quality that we have set for ourselves. However, this thinking is flawed because we'll never be able to live up to the standard we set when we're just starting out, and we're never going to feel confident before we get started. The quality of our work will always be less than what we aspire to. When starting something new, something that takes skills we don't have, then we have to take action while we don't know what we're doing, when we're not confident. Only then do we give ourselves the opportunity to improve. We will build skills over time and create a real basis for confidence. So escaping the knowledge trap requires recognizing that taking action is the only way to improve our skills and improve the quality of our work. Confidence does not show up without taking action first, and book learning will never match actual practice. But even when we recognize this, there's another way that our thoughts can work against us. When we form a goal and anticipate the work required to reach it, we may sense the difficulty ahead and feel overwhelmed. This is natural, but our sense of difficulty can often be informed by the mistaken belief that the difficulty in starting will be the same difficulty we face along each step. This is the progress trap. In reality, as we progress, we gain more skill and our direction becomes clearer. Getting started is the hardest part because of the amount of unknowns, and because it can be difficult to establish a habit of consistently working on something new. But this is only temporary. By not seeing this and projecting the difficulty of getting started onto the whole journey, we create a view in our mind of work that is too painful and too overwhelming. Naturally, we want to avoid this pain, so we do nothing instead. To escape this trap, we need to make clear to ourselves that the first step is the hardest, and the rest get easier as we gain knowledge and build skills. And the final one I call the guilt trap. This refers to the tendency to see the work required to achieve goals as all-encompassing. At the present, we are in a state where we aren't really moving in the direction of our goals. We aren't doing what we know is required, and we think if we were to finally get started, if we were finally to start making progress, our time for leisure would disappear. We'd be consumed with constant work. So we see work as undesirable, which again causes inaction. It is more rewarding to stay in our comfortable state of inaction right now than to enter what we imagine would be a state of endless grinding. But as we live in this limbo of wanting to achieve things, but refusing to get started, we start to feel guilt. We feel like we should be more productive, and this guilt shows up in all of our leisure time now. We are consistently unproductive while we feel like we should be productive all the time. These consequences all flow from the mistaken belief that we cannot relax and enjoy life while also putting in the work required to achieve our goals. So we need to change this belief. This belief is flawed because leisure is not the enemy of work, but is essential in order for us to do our best work. Without time to rest, quality suffers, and we're always given the temptation to procrastinate as well. So we need to clearly give ourselves permission to relax and enjoy leisure without guilt, and then we'll finally be able to be productive. For anyone struggling with this problem in particular, I would recommend reading the book The Now Habit by Neil Fiore, because he goes into the problem in a lot of depth and recommends practical steps for dealing with it. For example, he teaches that we should schedule leisure time first before we consider work on difficult projects. Now, recognizing these traps does not fix everything overnight. I still struggle with procrastination. However, understanding the thoughts that drive an action has been critical in helping me establish awareness, which has helped to move me in the right direction after struggling for so long. And I believe the same will be true for you if you struggle with similar problems of getting started on your goals. Thanks for watching and have a great day.